everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight for our September Parent Education Tonight. We're really excited to welcome Miss Michelle Tovar, a former parent of GMS, a Montessori certified teacher. She's still working at a Montessori school, I think, as an interventionist. And now she has her wonderful practical life parenting coaching company. So we'll let her talk a little bit more about herself. But thank you so much for joining us. And for those that aren't here, we hope you enjoy the recording.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephanie. And thank you, Patricia, for having me. I always love being a part of GMS. So hello, everybody. Thank you so much for carving out time, whether it's watching the recording or right now. I'm here to help you find more joy and ease as a parent. So let's go ahead and get started. A lot of us have probably been told at one point that, enjoy your kids. It goes by fast. I know I have definitely been told that. And, a lot of parents have a desire to parent more joyfully, to have more fun in their interactions with their children. But the reality is that parenting in this modern day and age, it just parents are dealing with a lot of conflicting priorities that pull away from what they truly want, right? The challenge of balancing the endless to-do list, responsibilities, really just kind of sometimes get in the way of that deep connection and just really having fun. So, a lot of parents want to break certain patterns of maybe, getting to that point where they start yelling or, responding in a reactive way. But it really takes more than just wanting that change. And so my goal today is to give you some very actionable, different perspectives on thinking about how you're engaging with yourself and also with your children. And my goal is to help you connect with your inner child again so that you can truly see the power of play in parenting. I love this quote by Maria Montessori. She says, play is the work of the child. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as we move on. But really, what I have in store for us, if I can switch the slide, there we go, is I'll start off with a little introduction so you can get to know me more. Then we'll talk about why play is so important. We'll take a little quiz, and then I'll give you some strategies that you can implement in your home starting today. So a little bit about me, as Stephanie mentioned, I became a certified parent coach. Have been a Montessori teacher for over 25 years. It was really during COVID that I saw there was such a huge need that a support that parents needed. And I didn't have the time to really dive deeper as a teacher. So having that time now, I'm really able to get deeper with my clients and unlock their potential. It's really made a world of a difference. And it still fills my cup up to be able to make a difference in the world. And so that's why I'm here with you guys today to share some of those things. And as a longtime Montessori teacher turned parent coach, I really help parents break the cycle of yelling, anger, and guilt and just become sturdier leaders for their children. And I'm a mom of three. I know what it's like to parent in this modern, fast-paced world that we're living in. My house can be very loud and crazy at times, but we love to laugh. We love to have fun together. My oldest started his senior year. He's going to be 18 on Saturday, so it really does go by fast. And I'm not sure if you have read the article that came out a couple weeks ago, but the US Surgeon General sent an advisory on how parental stress is having a huge impact on our nation. They're really calling for a fundamental shift on how we prioritize mental health for parents. So 33% of parents reported a high level of stress, and 48% say that on most days, the stress is completely overwhelming. So parents really need better support. When I read the article, two thoughts came to mind. The first was like, it's about time that, the world and the government is seeing this as importance. And number two, let's put some new things in place. Because really, we all know that parenting is the most difficult job you'll ever have. And we, this generation, have a lot more greater challenges than others had. And, when you think about adding the stress of like, why is this so hard? When you don't have a support system to tell you or to kind of guide you, that kind of adds to it. And I believe it's taken the world way too long to realize that really taking care of children starts with the parents. It takes the adults in their lives. So the bottom line is that parenting is really hard, right? We all have periods of shame and moments of motivation. I wish it was the other way around. I wish we had, periods of motivation and moments of shame. But humans really don't work that way, which is why coaching is so great because I'm able to give, parents a safe space to feel seen and heard. And when they grow, then their children grow alongside them. Some of the stressors that were mentioned in the article were financial, time demands, children's health and safety, parent loneliness, technology and social media, and just cultural pressures. And so, although play cannot solve all of these stressors, I truly believe that play has such a healing power for both the adult and the child. And so let's kind of look how plays out because we can see that a lot of families are living in this pool of unmet needs, right? And so what happens if we look at it through like, the child and the child's not getting their needs met, the adult's not getting their needs met. And so whether it is, a need for connection or autonomy or maybe more independence, your child, will begin to escalate or, through their behavior, and they're pretty much just telling you that they have a need that's not being met. And then the adult will start to feel that in their nervous system and then become, emotionally reactive. And so what happens is the adult snaps and yells and threatens or takes their iPad away or doesn't let them, go out. And it's really, that reverting into that power over stance. It's really important to recognize that that's really actually the moment where the adult is, because the child is encroaching on their needs, the adult is really just trying to get their needs met and just trying, to ultimately stop the behavior without getting curious what might be going on. And so what happens is the child pulls away, they start to feel that disconnection. And then the parent will maybe, step into some ineffective communication or lecturing or justifying why they were reactive. And then that's when the guilt and the worry and the shame starts to set in. And then there's that wooing them back and trying to essentially go into like a more power under type of parenting. And so this is really a cycle that a lot of families are unfortunately stuck in that causes a lot of stress. And so really my work as a coach is to break these patterns. And I work with many families to just really build better emotional intelligence for all members of the family and effective communication tools. So, what does this have to do with play, right? Play is so important, for a lot of reasons. First of all, children really understand their world, their bodies. It builds confidence. Another reason is that, as I mentioned in the beginning of that quote from Maria Montessori, like children are wired for play, even teenagers, right? So play is essentially their language. And children spend a lot of time being pushed to do adult things, right? Like making decisions, sticking to schedules, being quiet when their body is screaming otherwise. And so children really know a lot more about play than we do as adults. Um, and so there are a lot of benefits to play. I have to move my little screen. Physically, active play helps children with coordination, gross and fine motor skills, and just, cultivating a healthy relationship with the environment and themselves. Emotionally, while that social engagement, they get to be able to experience emotions, those stronger emotions like anger or fear in a more manageable way. Socially, play helps them develop awareness, and advocacy, and pick up on those social cues. Cognitively, play can improve them with the executive functioning skills of planning and remembering and following through. Creatively, imagination is the gateway to innovation and communication. Play, children are, oops, I went too far. Sorry about that. Children are allowed to practice communications, right, in a kind of low stakes arena. So let's go ahead and take this quiz. You're not getting a grade, so don't worry. If you don't mind just typing in the chat room, I'll read the questions off, and then maybe Stephanie can read the answers. I have a screen here that's hard to see. Okay, so number 1, play supports both a child and adult to de-stress and return to safety within. True or false? If you could just type it in the chat.
True.
True.
Got it, true.
Yes, yes. Play is a way to de-stress, like, laughter, lightheartedness. It naturally lowers our blood pressure as adults. And of course, for children, that cortisol is kind of leaving their body, which is great. Number 2, play is the real work of childhood. Through it, children have their best chance for becoming whole, happy adults. True or false?
True.
True, yes, yes. That happy children grow up to be happy adults. Children that have healthy emotional habits grow up to be adults that have healthy emotional habits. Number 3 is personal, so it's depending on your experience, but many adults have experienced the lack of emotional connection in their childhood, and as adults find it daunting to play with their children. So is that could be true for you
True.
in your experience, or it could be false?
We had it true.
Okay. And number 4, play is not an act of incredible healing.
False. We got a false.
Yeah. So 4 kind of goes with 3, right? Like if your parents for whatever reason didn't show up and give you what you needed as far as, that connection, that lightheartedness, that play, that time being present, maybe they had to work a lot. Maybe they just were unable, or it was just not something that came naturally to them. And so you find it now with your children, kind of, you find it difficult. There's a barrier there, whether it's, something that you just don't want to do, or something you feel really uncomfortable doing, or don't have that connection within yourself. So it is incredibly healing to reconnect with who you were at that child and what you needed, at that time when you were a child. So when we look at this, I mentioned a little bit about the needs of adults and also children. Everybody has whether you're a child, a teenager, someone at the end of your life, we all have these core needs that we need. And obviously, the physical, the ones on the bottom, the physical safety, security, food, and water, those are, very important and necessary. But I want to spend a little bit time in the middle with the psychological needs. Um, because we all know that really a behavior, whether it's good or bad, is an expression of a need. And one of those needs that are listed here, whether that need has been met or unmet. And so when, the child is showing an unwanted behavior, this is where, we access that pause and just get really curious about what need could be going unmet. And using play can really help meet the needs of connection, love, attention, and affection. Now, it doesn't mean that you're not going to address the behavior, the unwanted behavior, or support your child to learn what's lacking. This is just simply a tool to get your child from a dysregulated state back down to social engagement so that they're able to access that logical part of their brain. They're able to have that teachable moment. And children really rely on their parents for co regulation. And so, parents being that model for them because they have that prefrontal cortex fully developed, as the adult, they're able to help their child who's developing those skills understand what's lacking there. And I can share like a recent story with my middle son. He's 15. He's going to be 16 in December, and he's my very strong-willed child. He loves to challenge. Well, anyways, his older brother was at work, and I had asked him. I said, "Hey, can you walk the dog for your brother? He's at work." And he was like, "It's not my day." Like he immediately started to give me pushback, because it's not his day. Why am I doing that? So I had a choice here, right? I could meet him with the power struggle, or I could meet him with some connection and acceptance and appreciation. And so this is what I did, knowing that he's really been into watching UFC and like jujitsu and all of that. Like I turned around and I did this pretend kick and I put my fist up and I said, "Let's go." And he accepted the challenge and we began play fighting. He was laughing. He was completely surprised that I tackled him. And then after a while, I was like, "Okay, I'm done. I just really need you to walk the dog. I know it's not your day." And he's like, "Fine." And off he went. And so, some parents I think are fearful to use play in situations like that because they, maybe feel like it's sending a message like, "Oh, that behavior is okay. It is okay if I, engage in something fun." And there are situations and there are children where you can't necessarily go into that play. Like my youngest is more sensitive, so his feelings need to go to completion before he relaxes, and then we can go into play. So it depends on your child and their personality, but it's important to really meet the source and the need first before you move into play. My son that I was talking about he switches really quickly. So play, he's like always ready. So that's why it kind of works really nicely with him. Um, so I want to kind of explore these quadrants of empowered play. Um, there's four here. So the first one is co-regulation play. And that is really just surrendering to the moment, right? And just being conscious and curious, and it can be child-led, and it's really just to help support your child to that regain that safety and that presence by that attuned adult. I get asked a lot about roughhousing and what it looks like and what happens if my child gets too much of it, or are they going to be aggressive? And what I have found with my three boys is 30-second rounds are really great because whether it's a pillow fight or it's a wrestling match or they're having a dance party or, they used to play this force field game with their hands where it was like pushing. What I have found is that like pausing and then restarting with 30-second rounds, it allows that energy to rise and then fall. And so what's happening is that cortisol is releasing, but in a more manageable way. So, healing and processing play is allowing your child to experience both perspectives. So maybe there's something your child's going through that's causing them stress. You know, having a role play where they can kind of process those emotions or those feelings that they're going through works really great. And also, role reversing gives them a sense to see from the other perspective and also gives them a sense of like power too. Kids often feel powerless. And so, giving them that personal agency and autonomy through play is really helpful. I can remember when my oldest was 2.5 and I had my second, it was a baby. And obviously, a lot of families go through that when there's a new family member, that transition. I remember when, if I was tied up with the baby in the room, like I bought these walkie talkies and he had one and I had one, and we would kind of play this thing like he was in charge and he would check in on the walkie and he would check like act like he was be the security guard. And it really gave him that sense of being in that different role and having that power, and he loved it. um, Teaching through discipline. Discipline means to teach. So essentially, you're modeling and you're teaching with empathy and attunement and trust. So games are wonderful. Songs, storytelling. Children love to hear stories, whether it's stories about you when you were little or just characters that they're really into, that you just make a story and have some sort of teachable moment. Um, Another one I get asked often is about swearing, like when children are swearing, um, like how do you kind of navigate through that using play? And swearing is really just learning the language, right? And learning that words have power. And so there's a game that it's like you can't say a certain word, and the word is just made up. You just kind of make it up. And I remember, you can like have them try to figure out the meaning of the word, but without saying the word. So then you just kind of build that awareness of how words have power and words have meaning, and some words are appropriate and some words, we don't say. The last one is the spontaneous play, and that's really just walking through life with the lens that like everything has the potential to be fun. Whether it's being silly, it's changing your voice with making accents. It's really anything that's going to bring a good time is essentially being spontaneous. So I wanted to just reflect here if you wanted to kind of unmute or type in the chat. How are you? How are we feeling in regards to carving more time to play with our children? Ideally, maybe 15 minutes per day. Ideally, would be a little bit more closer to the hour, but putting just kind of go diving into the world and following their lead or what their interests are without trying to correct or teach or say something. Is that, would anybody like to share? Is that something that they feel is they are committed to doing or would like more information about?
I can
The
add
vision,
something. Go ahead, Mr. No, I just think speaking more of like the toddlers, like I think sometimes we forget that I can always go back to that Montessori triad with like the environment, the adult, and then the child again, right? So like I feel like tying in that play, sometimes their work is their play. So you can turn so much of everyday opportunities into playful moments, while still keeping your crazy schedules and your crazy routines. And, toddlers love water, and toddlers love just to be involved in the cooking and the cleaning and the giving them those opportunities. And that's an opportunity for play as well, in an indirect way that we may not think is play, cooking dinner or something like that, but that is a playful moment for them to help mix and blend things and scrub things and scrub the potatoes or whatever it may be. That is also a playful opportunity, especially for toddlers. That's before they think it's work, right? Like real work, real life work.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think as parents, sometimes we come home and we have to get dinner together, and maybe you have other children that have, sports or homework. And so there's like so many things competing. Um, but at that moment when, maybe your child comes to you and wants to play, or in your mind it doesn't fit into the agenda, but just giving them that small amount of time to connect, to just let them feel seen and heard, is going to free up so much more of your time moving into the rest of the day, because that need has been met. And so like Stephanie is saying, like whether that's cooking or that's doing a task, maybe let's feed the dog or doing something, but making it fun, it really can free up a lot more of your energy moving into the rest of the day and
Michelle,
evening.
we have a parent that says, luckily we get to spend a good amount of time playing. Our issue is more when playing suddenly becomes too rough between our toddler and our baby.
Right. Yeah. So I'm assuming it's the toddler that's being more rough to the baby and not knowing those limits. Um, and I think it's important to obviously make sure the baby's safe, and if the interactions are too much, then you have to definitely separate them and have a conversation and talk about the levels. But if it's because the toddler has a lot of energy and needs a release, then that might be a game that you would do with him or her to help with that release, right? And that way the baby is safe. And then maybe they can come back and then interact with the child, with the baby, like with a book or something after that release. So some children, especially, and I don't know what time of the day this is happening, but I know a lot of times for bedtime, that's a common struggle for families, because some children end up winding up and then they get ready for bed, and your hope is that they're going to wind down, right? But some children need that release, and then they can relax and get into the next thing. So um that's definitely the sibling interactions can need to be kind of monitored to make sure that it's not going too far. And I'm not sure what the age difference is either, but I'm assuming it's the small baby.
It's only a 17-month age difference, so the 9 months and then like 2 years and 2 months. It's not really like a specific time of the day. I think it's just like excitement.
Yeah, maybe it's because they haven't seen each other for part of the day too.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't think so.
So, do
Unfortunately.
you mind sharing like kind of a little, like an example of like what
Yeah.
happens and what kind of the reaction?
Just we'll be playing and then all of a sudden she'll push the bait. Like she'll just push her. She'll just like walk over and
So
push her.
watch her topple over.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
genuinely.
I don't know.
And then
Um,
what is so the baby's crying or the baby's hurt or uncomfortable, and then what kind of happens next?
Well, it depends because the baby kind of like looks over at us, like, should I be upset about this or like how should I feel about this? But sometimes if she does realize she hurts the baby, she's telling her it's okay. I'm like, you did what? Okay. Like she's telling her it's okay, or she's trying to comfort her. And then other times she tries to do it again. So
It
Yeah.
becomes like a game. maybe.
yeah.
Like action, reaction. Yeah.
Mhm.
And we try not to have like big reactions, of course, but sometimes when it's completely unexpected, it's hard to not have a reaction. And then
Sure.
she just kind of laughs in your face, which is even more frustrating. So
Sure. Yeah. And children really from the age of 7 and below, well, children under 7 really don't have that impulse control completely. Like they're still learning a lot about themselves and a lot about their environment. And especially when they're having, moments where, and I'm not saying this is the situation, but there might be moments of attention they're seeking or wanting, and it's coming out through the behavior. Um, and then, and so I would suggest like getting curious about if you're seeing any patterns, if they're happening at a certain time where she is like wanting, like noticing maybe your attention's more on the baby. Is it happening then, or is it just like you said? Is it more of like her like wanting to see what happens when like the reaction part?
thank you.
No problem.
And Ms. Michelle, that this question kind of correlate of what Michelle shared. What kind of since you have experience having 3 children from different ages, how can you integrate like the family? Because of course, as parents, we try to give attention to each of them, but sometimes it's really hard to find that time. So
Yeah.
how can you having them in different stages? I mean, how can you integrate everyone? And I'm sure that happens, that difficulty happens with our families that have more than one.
Right.
Different ages, a toddler and a 5-year-old is really hard because they're in different stages and levels, and but you would like to play with both, and that would be great if we can all play together.
Right.
But
Yeah,
yeah.
no, that's a great question. And it's actually perfect, Patricia, because the next slide I wanted to talk about, like we all love our children, right? And a lot of times parents think, well, I love my child, so I'm connected to them. But love and connection are two separate things. So connection is really, what lights up your child? Like what makes them feel seen and heard and valued? Like that could be very different with the different personalities, the different ages and stages, right? Like I was sharing my middle one, he loves to debate and argue about sports, and like that's not my idea of connecting, but I've had to learn that that's how he feels seen and heard, and that lights him up. So I've learned to engage in that with him and connect with him at that level. So I think true connection is really important on an individual basis as well. So whether, I remember my oldest was obsessed with trains. And so like playing with your 6-year-old, if they're really into whatever they're into, or watching YouTube video with your 16-year-old, like what lights up your child? Like the toddler that's pushing the sibling, like is there room to kind of get curious about what maybe one-on-one time you can spend with him or her? So I think it's a girl, right? With her, so that she could feel that connection deeply at a deeper level. um, so I would say definitely connection is going to lead you to that cooperation. It's going to lead you to just having more ease in your day, and also just when you're when you're connecting with someone, it's not always like what you would feel is like connecting. Like I know with teenagers, like a lot of times talking in the car is great because you're not even looking at each other, right? Like, so every child's different, each stage is different. But I think truly getting curious about what lights them up, what makes them feel seen and heard and valued, and connecting with that through play is really, and yeah, you're right, Patricia, it's hard, right? There's not enough time in the day and there's not enough hours in the week, but I think just starting small with those maybe 15 minutes a day, or and then building from there is gonna really start to build that connection for I think I saw somebody in the waiting room for you as a family, right? And then of course, like you can kind of grow from there. Like we used to have as families, we used to plan, each member would plan one fun activity per month. Um, and the rule was like you can't complain like what the person's planning. And then obviously we, would, if we had a budget, we would talk about that ahead of time. So it could be anywhere from playing hide and seek in the dark to going for a bike ride to going to watch a movie, like, but that person was in charge of planning. And we did that for many years. Now their schedules are really crazy, so it's harder to do it. We do it more in the summer. But incorporating those family activities is really nice because I remember my one son was really into drawing, and so we did a like YouTube tutorial drawing thing, and it really gave us insight on what really his interests were and how he really enjoyed it, and he kind of taught us. So I think encouraging play as a family as a whole and also individually is super important.
Oh, super important because now they have their choice and they feel like they're involved and they can just make decisions.
Exactly.
That's a great idea. Thank you.
And I think that can even go for how Michelle was asking with the 2-year-old and the 17-month-old. What you can also do with that is if you're noticing during those play times, maybe allowing, the oldest one to choose what they're going to play with, or how you're going to play. But then if it gets too rough, then it's okay, then we've got to put that attention on the youngest one. And now we're going to end up, it got beyond. So we're going to play, with her game, or we're going to find something that's more age appropriate for the 17-year-old, kind of switching that attention. As you guys are saying, that sometimes seems like it's an attention seeking, and the more she can not push the younger one, the longer you can play and build that special time with what she likes to do, and trying to kind of again refocus that positive attention on the youngest one that's not having the pushing behavior.
Definitely. Yeah. I think it's definitely message of something. And so it's just like getting curious, kind of like that iceberg. You see the behavior, but then getting curious what might here.
Okay.
So I can share, my client had some barriers around play, and she said, I've developed so much awareness around my relationship with play. Sorry, I have to move this thing down here. And this has changed my relationship with my kids, and it feels amazing. She says, I am also opening up to more play in myself. I started to find joy in dancing on my own and with my kids, and I love making my kids laugh every day. And I think this is the true testament of a lot of parents. If you're early in your parenting and there's kind of like that disconnect, it's like, who was I before I became a parent? Like, what brings me joy? What lights me up? There's like that disconnect almost because you're in this like parenting stage for so long. And so for her, it was reconnecting on what lights her up. And she, for her, it was music, it was dancing. She's like, I haven't done that in years. And just reconnecting with that brought her so much joy, which then spilled into her children. So it's like we can't pour from an empty cup. So we have to reconnect with what brings us joy and happiness so that we can, spread it with our children. So I hope that these strategies can kind of inspire you to connect and play more with your children and as a family. And of course, if you want to dive deeper in this, definitely reach out. I always offer a complimentary call. I'd love to get to know you and your family and see how I can support you in any way. But I'd love to hear any takeaways or any questions you might have. And I thank you so much for being here, because I know it's always difficult to balance, bedtime and all of the things. So whether you're here or you're watching later, I appreciate your time. And it's a true testament of how much you care and love of your family.
Thank you so much, Michelle. We really appreciate you doing this every year for our families. And every year she chooses a new topic to talk about, which is always refreshing. So thank you again for your time.
Of course, of course, of course.
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Anytime. Yep, I'm here if you guys need me. And if there's any specific topic that you have an idea on, just, feel free to let me know if there's a different need out there.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
You got a lot of thank you so much for the discussion and topic. Thank you and thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, I hope you guys have a good rest of your week, and we'll see you soon.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Perfect. Thank you, Miss Michelle, one more time. Thank you. Thank you. It was so great to see you.
Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate
Hope
it.
to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Okay.